This is every time Quagmire took advantage of women on Family Guy. So remember how he reacted right after Meg turned 18? Okay, if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that Quagmire is absolutely obsessed with Meg. Like, he literally records her in the bathroom, and she doesn't even seem super surprised by it. It's almost like she's expecting him to perv on her. But the fact that she's underage seemed to protect her until it didn't. This other time, he tried creeping up on Meg while she and her friends were trying to have a sleepover. And when they weren't talking dirty like he wanted, he just straight up left. Like, what did you expect schoolgirls to talk about, Glenn? Let's be real here. But most of the time, Meg's definitely not the most popular girl in the world. Like, even when her parents tried to throw her a surprise birthday party, literally nobody showed. They couldn't even bribe anyone to show up.
Chris, what the hell? I thought you were gonna pay the kids from school to show up. I gave you $300.
I guess even bribery won't work when it comes to someone like Meg. Poor girl. Eventually, everyone just decides to go to bed and leave her all alone on her big day, even though, I don't know, they could have at least cut a cake for her or something. But just when Meg thinks that her birthday is basically ruined, guess who shows up? Who else but Quagmire? And honestly, I feel like it's the sweetest thing for Quagmire to come over for Meg's birthday. He even buys her a scented candle, which is pretty much every girl's dream gift, I'm assuming, but it doesn't take long for things to take a creepy turn.
Well, it's your 18th birthday, Meg. That's a very important milestone in a young woman's life.
Yep, Quagmire takes things to a whole new level of perversion when he starts feeling up Meg. She looks bored of it, as if she's basically expecting everyone to disappoint her, and if you think Peter is going to defend her, think again.
Yeah, look at Quagmire hitting on that skank.
But to be fair, even though Quagmire put his hand on Meg's thigh a tad too long, he seems to just be there to wish her a happy birthday. He even tells her a fun little story about one of his flights, but all of a sudden, Peter's protectiveness kicks in. Him and Brian jump in to kick Quagmire out as if he's setting their house on fire, and pretty much as soon as he's gone, they get on the same page about what just happened.
Okay, that was weird.
That was weird.
Right?
Oh my god, so weird.
I tell you something, if he touches my daughter, I'm gonna be kicking butts and taking names.
To be fair, it's pretty obvious that Glenn has some bad intentions here. I mean, he literally texts Meg that night, and I don't know about you, but I definitely wouldn't text my best friend's daughter after 5 p.m. Heck, I probably wouldn't text her at all unless it's to ask her where her dad is. Next thing you know, Quagmire's out here making small talk. Like, he even brings up Farmville just to keep the conversation going, and weirdly enough, it seems to get Meg actually interested in him. He ends up asking her to hang out, and for some reason, Meg agrees. He's literally old enough to be her father, but I guess she doesn't seem to have a problem with that. The next evening, Glenn's showing up with a bouquet of flowers ready to take Meg out on a date. Or, I mean, maybe it's just a friendly hangout, but like, why would he bring flowers? And why would Meg want to hang out with him at all? Weirdly enough, Lois, of all people, encourages Meg to go out on her date, but she has some pretty solid reasoning for doing so.
Peter, nothing's gonna happen. Don't you see? She's only doing this to get a rise out of us.
Peter's not entirely sold, but he doesn't have much of a choice now, does he? Meg's off with Quagmire, and there's no telling what will happen next. At first, it just seems like a normal dinner date. I mean, Quagmire's acting like a love-struck teenager, but I guess it could be worse, right? Well, I would have been slightly less creeped out if he didn't ask Meg to come home with him, but that's exactly what he does, and Meg idiotically agrees. But the good thing is, she doesn't agree to actually, go inside. Instead, she does the slightly less inappropriate thing of giving Quagmire a peck on the lips before heading home. Now, this is clearly turning into a thing. I mean, Meg spooning with Quagmire on that couch, so like, are they a couple? This has gone so far beyond normal behavior that I don't even think we can classify this. Luckily, Peter seems to agree that this is super inappropriate, so he decides to come between them. Literally. But that doesn't stop these two. Quagmire even helps Meg study, which is just so creepy. It's like he's acknowledging she's a high school kid while also trying to get with her. Things get to a point where Quagmire's taking Meg to his cabin, or in his own words, the stuff it in. This forces Peter and Lois to chase them, hoping to stop Meg from making the worst mistake of her life. Unfortunately, it takes Peter and Lois a while to get there, and during that time, Meg and Quagmire start to get a bit too comfortable. Like, somehow their shadows start undressing each other, which gives Quagmire his cue to take his own shirt off. Bit by bit, Quagmire is moving closer towards taking Meg's virginity, and like, I get that she's technically a consenting adult, but come on! This is just wrong on so many levels. Lois and Peter burst in just at the last minute. Meg tries to tell Peter that she's an adult who can do what she wants, but he's not having it.
You may be an adult, but you're still my daughter. And it's my job to protect you from errant wieners. So I don't care how old you are, you're gonna do what I say and get in the damn car!
Meg finally sees reason, and Lois tells Quagmire that she'll cut his bits off and feed them to Brian if he ever comes near Meg again. Crisis averted, but man, Quagmire clearly took advantage of how young Meg was here, even though he didn't manage to make it to home base. But hey, at least he waited until she was 18. That's not always guaranteed when it comes to Glenn Quagmire. It all starts when Quagmire's at a party at Peter's house. He meets a girl named Kira, who seems pretty young, but I guess I'd believe her if she said she was of age. And I'm guessing Quagmire's not the sort of person who asks too many questions on that front. Just when things are about to get fun, Lois jumps in and basically spoils the party for everyone. But hey, at least Quagmire gets to go home with a hot girl, right? And since everything's above board, there's no way things could go south, unless, of course, there's something we don't know, but I'll get to that later. The next morning, Quagmire's basking in the afterglow of what seems like a wild night. Clothes are lying all over the place, and Kira's lying mostly naked on top of him. That's when she reveals that she's actually a high school student.
What the hell? You said you were 23!
Yeah, and you said you love me.
Yikes. Well, she got you there, Glenn, but things are about to get a whole lot worse, because the police just knocked on Quagmire's door, and they have a very important question to ask.
Did you have sex with this underage girl?
Something tells me this isn't the first time Quagmire was asked this question, and instead of denying it, he says he'd rather cop to it just so that he has bragging rights, and that's when he's told he's under arrest. All he has to say is this.
Alright, but let me just send the pictures I took of her last night to all my friends.
Did Quagmire just send literal evidence of a crime to his entire contact list? And like, isn't Joe on that list?
Take him away. We've got all the awesome evidence we need.
Well, it turns out that you can't just be a literal predator and walk free. The next day, Quagmire has to go to all of his neighbors and tell them he's a sex offender. And that's not all. He needs to appear in front of a judge, and the only hope he has of not going to jail is if he brings in character witnesses. Peter offers to help, of course, although something tells me that's going to do a lot more harm than good. Unsurprisingly, Peter makes an absolutely terrible argument in court that's apparently inspired by Game of Thrones. Basically, he says that there's no such thing as a girl being underage if she's, had her blood, which is just the wildest thing to say in front of a judge. And wait till you hear what he says next.
Mr. Quagmire was born on February 29th. Ergo, he's only 12.
Wow, now that's one heck of an argument. I mean, it defies all logic, but since when did that matter to Peter anyway? The rest of Quagmire's character witnesses are even worse. Joe has Glenn slamming his head into the table. At this point, he probably just wants to go to jail so that he doesn't have to deal with any of this anymore. Or rather, he asks to take the stand so that he can tell his side of the story. And let me tell you, his story really is pretty insane. Like, his dad was apparently away a lot because he was in the military, and as for his mom, well, let's just say that Quagmire inherited his, love obsession from her.
It's a boy, Mrs. Quagmire.
Ah, that's wonderful.
How do you feel?
Horny. Really horny. Could you put him back so I can push him out again?
What an unfortunate day to have ears. Like, I'm wishing I was born deaf right now, so I'd never have to hear those words, especially in that order. Now, while Quagmire's story might be, moving in a totally gross kind of way, the judge isn't swayed, and I mean, Quagmire did sleep with a minor, so I totally get why the judge isn't buying his sob story. His Honor slams the gavel down and sentences Quagmire to a whopping 20 years in prison. But out of the blue, Quagmire's mom shows up. So it turns out that Glenn's mom found religion, and she's come to court to help her son out. She begs the judge to let her take Quagmire into her own custody to guide him and make him a follower of Christ. I mean, fat chance of that happening, but she's free to try. Unfortunately, this absolutely ridiculous proposition doesn't sway the judge either. The sentence still stands, and Quagmire's looking at a 2-decade bid in the slammer. And the thing is, he's pretty pissed at his mom because he thinks she made him this way.
Oh, come on, Quagmire. You're a grown man, responsible for his own choices. Seems kind of cowardly to blame someone else for your problems.
Thank you! Finally someone's starting to make sense around here. There's just no way around it. Quagmire finds himself standing in front of prison, which will be his home for the next 2 years. Well, maybe this way he'll learn a thing or two about personal responsibility. Maybe this is how he turns his life around. But just as Quagmire's about to step into prison, the judge just screeches in and tells him to hold his horses. It turns out that Quagmire's mom slept with the judge, and it worked! Quagmire's free to go, and all it required was for his mom to literally sell her body. The episode ends with Quagmire and his mom deciding to give their relationship another chance. A pretty sweet moment, right?
Quagmire got away with it and learned nothing. That's great.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Peter. Maybe if he'd actually done some time, he wouldn't have been able to pull off literal sex crimes. This little saga begins when Brian finds himself cast on The Bachelorette. And wouldn't you know it, Quagmire's gotten himself a spot too. How did he do it, you ask?
Nope, no monsters in here.
Now check the bathroom.
Nope, none in here either.
Okay, good.
So can I be on The Bachelorette?
Yeah, good night.
Strange tactics, but hey, it works. Pretty soon, Quagmire's giggitying it up, barely able to contain his own excitement or even his genitals, I'm assuming. And the crazy thing is, Glenn even manages to get a rose, which means he's moving on to the next round. Before you know it, Quagmire's got himself a private date with the Bachelorette herself. And what does he do? Why, put a roofie in her champagne, of course. She ends up face planting onto the ground because apparently Quagmire just can't get it up if consent is involved. Like, he literally starts dragging her to his room to do Lord knows what while she's unconscious, and the only thing that stops him is the camera pointed right at him. Now, he obviously can't do something this illegal on camera, so he bids the Bachelorette a lovely evening and just heads back into his room, but not before doing something really important. And do you want to know what the craziest thing is? Quagmire ends up getting another rose. Though that's probably because the Bachelorette's got no memory of him drugging her, which I guess is the whole point of roofies. But come on, this is Quagmire we're talking about. He's the sort of person that would find a tied up helpless girl and think it's his birthday or something. So right before the big game, the cheerleaders are all together, but one of them is curiously absent. Now, I know what you're thinking, but no, it's not Quagmire. Instead, Stewie literally kidnapped the poor girl. And in case you're wondering why, it's because she spells her name, which is Cindy, by the way, with an I at the end. Yep, that's literally all there is to it. Okay, I might have exaggerated. Stewie also wanted to become the head cheerleader, and taking Cindy out was the only way he'd get the gig. He's pretending to be here, of course, and honestly, he's doing a pretty solid job. He even manages to climb all the way to the top of the pyramid right before he brings it tumbling down, of course. But hey, at least he got his chance to feel special. Stewie blames the screw up on the rest of the cheerleading squad, of course, but I just have one question. What the heck happened to Cindy? That's where good old Quagmire comes in.
Dear Diary, jackpot.
If you've enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll love this one too.